Could it be that Yonko Shanks possesses the demonic powers of the Holy Knights? This is one of the questions that has arisen after the latest manga revelations, where it's confirmed that the Holy Knights also have the great regeneration ability of the Gorosei. His father was the supreme commander of the Holy Knights, and is now a Gorosei, replacing Saturn. He must have had these demonic powers even before becoming a Gorosei. His brother is the current leader of the Holy Knights, and must also have these demonic powers, especially since his subordinates possess them as well. So where does Shanks fit into all of this? If his brother and father have the great regeneration ability, is there a chance that Shanks also has it? To figure that out, we need to ask the following question. When does a Holy Knight obtain these demonic powers? During the invasion of Elbaf, something curious was mentioned. The Holy Knight's plan was to take the giant children with them, but they would have to do so by ship, since the children did not have the mark required to travel through the Abyss. The Abyss is the summoning circle, through which both the Gorosei and Holy Knights appear. The fact that they emphasize the need for a mark to cross it must be the key to these demonic powers. And it is when they are marked that they gain all these supernatural abilities like great regeneration or being summoned through a magic circle. But when is a Holy Knight marked? Is it from birth, or do they need to already belong to the Order? A requirement to join the squad in order to obtain these powers? I feel like there are different cases. In some instances, one might need to first join the Holy Knights to then receive these powers, since Gunko made it clear that they can even recruit people who aren't Celestial Dragon descendants to be part of this squad, just like they tried to do with Loki. Obviously, these new members who aren't descendants of the Celestial Dragon would gain the powers the moment they join. On the other hand, if someone comes from a warrior lineage like the Figarland family, since Garlin already belonged to this squad and was someone important, then his children would be destined to join from birth. And if they receive the mark as babies, then in simple terms, Shamrock and Shanks would have had the mark of demonic power since birth. So then, why has Shanks taken injuries and even lost an arm? What if Shanks' case is something extraordinary, and even though he bears the mark, he was never able to use the demonic powers? During the hunting tournament that took place in God Valley, something surprising was revealed. There were chests with prizes for the winners of the tournament. Shanks was found by Roger's pirates in one of those chests. What if it wasn't a coincidence that Shanks was inside that chest? What if he was one of the prizes in that tournament? Some kind of special slave meant for the Tenryubito winner. Perhaps Garlin offered him as a prize for not having the demonic powers despite being marked. He would then have remained only with Shamrock as his sole heir, since Shamrock was able to inherit those demonic powers from birth. Even if Shanks didn't have the powers of the Holy Knights or the Gorosei, having the Figarland bloodline alone would make him a valuable prize for anyone, essentially a special slave. Keep in mind, Sanji was also seen as a failure from birth, since although he was genetically modified, he couldn't awaken his powers like his brothers. With Shanks, it might be a similar case. However, nowadays, Sanji has awakened those powers. So then, could Shanks eventually do the same? We might see this same situation with Shanks, in case he truly does bear the mark from birth. I'll explore the possibility of Shanks having demonic powers later in the video, but for now, let me present another option for how he might have obtained the mark of demonic power. When it was revealed that Shanks had a twin brother and belonged to the Figarland family, something very interesting was mentioned. Shanks once went to Mary Jawas, but he didn't like the atmosphere there and preferred to return to the lower world. It's completely unknown when Shanks visited Mary Jawas. Was it when he was just a child? Or was it later, as an adult, when he already had his own pirate crew? If Shanks wasn't marked back when he was taken from God Valley, then maybe he received the mark when he visited Mary Joyce as Garland's son. They could have made an exception and given him the mark, assuming he would stay there and fulfill the role of a Holy Knight like his father and brother. What if all of this happened after he met Luffy? By that time, he already had the scar on his face and had lost the arm he sacrificed to save Luffy. That would explain why, even if he currently has the mark of demonic power, he couldn't regenerate his arm because he lost it before being marked. This would also explain why the Gorosei have scars. They may have received their marks after getting injured. So with the two possibilities I've given, if Shanks got the mark as a baby, but never activated his powers, being a failure like Sanji once was, that would explain the scar on his face and the loss of his arm. If he received the mark later in life during his visit to Marioa, possibly after meeting Luffy, then he still wouldn't be able to regenerate his arm or heal his facial scar, since those injuries occurred before the marking. Now, let's apply this idea to a future event. One of the most anticipated fights in the series is the clash between the Yonkos Shanks and Teach. This is one of those battles where Oda could really make the most of the story, because no matter what the outcome is, it would shock the audience. A victory for Shanks would send the fandom into a frenzy, since most expect him to be defeated by Teach, who would then go on to become Luffy's final enemy. But if Teach were to win, that would also be incredibly surprising, especially considering that Shanks is currently seen by many as the most powerful Yonko, even stronger than Blackbeard. In either case, the result will be shocking, and even more so if we factor in the possibility of Shanks possessing the demonic mark. For this battle, the chances of Oda trolling the fans increase dramatically. Can you imagine a perfectly balanced fight, and at some point during the clash, Blackbeard seemingly finishes off Shanks with a powerful attack, proclaiming himself the victor, similar to when Kaido knocked out Luffy before he awakened his devil fruit? Now picture this. As Teach is celebrating his victory and lets his guard down, he suddenly receives a devastating attack that completely annihilates him. And the one responsible? The Yonko Shanks. At that exact moment, Shanks unleashes the demonic power that may have been granted to him by his Figarland lineage, power he had kept hidden until that critical turning point. By doing so, the enemy would have no clue that Shanks also possessed these powers, and just when they thought they had defeated him, they would be completely unprepared for him to regenerate instantly. The shock this would cause is beyond description. It would be the kind of chapter that could literally break the internet, first with Shanks' possible defeat, and then with his return powered by demonic abilities. There's another possibility that really catches my attention, but for it to happen, Shanks would have had to receive the mark from birth, and yet, despite being marked, he hadn't awakened those powers until recently. He may have discovered he could use them, but refused to do so. However, in this decisive battle, when the fight is evenly matched, Shanks could suddenly regenerate his lost arm, using it to land a fatal blow on his opponent. The reason he would now be able to regenerate it is because he had been marked all along, but when he lost the arm, he hadn't awakened the power yet. So it's not that he lacked the mark, he simply didn't know how to use it. Without a doubt, something like this from the Yonko Shanks would be absolutely shocking. And even though it may sound far-fetched right now, let me remind you, up until Egghead, the idea of the possibility of immortal enemies was almost unthinkable. Time travel to the future also seemed impossible, and yet, it happened. Right now, anything is possible in One Piece. The new powers that are emerging don't seem to have any limits. Let me know all your thoughts about this topic in the comments. If you have any suggestions for future videos or things related to the channel, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll gladly take them into account. See you in the next video. Goodbye.